Last time on Low Budget Binge,
There's lots of repetition, ass end up. He might have embellished his own heroic actions. There's lots of repetition, ass end up. The entire cast run around the film covered head to toe in blood. There's lots of repetition, ass end up. It's also got Billy Zane, and that's cool.
and now the next death-defying chapter of Low Budget Binge.
Welcome back to ML Miller Frights, part of the Kings of Horror Network. I'm ML Miller. Before we begin, remember to give this video a like, share with your buddies across the electronic superhighway, click subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to ring that bell for notifications. Please get the word out about this channel to new folks and tame and tempt that all-important YouTube algorithm. All week, the Kings of Horror Network is running a contest giving away a copy of my new trade paperback, Gravetrancers, to a few lucky viewers. I apologize, but due to the current global situation, this is for US viewers only. Just send an email to hello@kingsofhorror.com with the subject line reading, "Gimme that Gravetrancers," with your full mailing address, and we will enter you in to be randomly chosen to receive a copy of the Gravetrancers trade paperback. Please let your comic shop know you want a copy of Gravetrancers. The final order cutoff is August 10th, and the book itself will be in stores September 2nd. More info down below. Alright, Low Budget Binge is where we venture down the path less traveled and look at low budget, no budget, and sometimes international films that never get that top billing you see with the usual Hollywood fare. Still, I've found that they often have that certain something special. I'll indicate in the review and down below where you can find these films along with their trailers. Here we go. The Last 5 Days is out now, on demand, and digital download from Wild Eye Releasing. The tried and true chestnut of the school film project is the reason this found footager exists, as two student filmmakers decide to investigate a pair of supposedly haunted locations near them. One, a haunted orchard where all the workers supposedly went crazy, and the other, a mountaintop where a ghost is supposed to push those who climb to the peak. After visiting both sites, the pair seem to bring back something paranormal to their apartment. The rest of the film builds to what is explained in the opening, as the body of two students were found mutilated in an apartment with the footage we are now watching. The Last 5 Days is an extremely low to no budgeter, and most likely the first project of these two filmmakers, Clay Moffatt and Joe Passini, who are also the stars of the film. The story itself is solid. I don't know if these are true urban myths the two are investigating, but they are ripe with potential for some scary moments. I like the idea that the two seemingly unrelated hauntings are connected in some way. There's a reveal in the last couple minutes of the film that I think comes way too late involving the origins of the haunted orchard. You really shouldn't be revealing key info about your story 5 minutes before the credits. There is a weird moment when the two filmmakers seem to notice the phoenix lights up in the night sky. They mention it and point it out, and quickly just change the subject. As a non-Phoenixonian and UFO enthusiast, I found this to be the most fascinating aspect of the film. But maybe the locals see the lights so often that it doesn't faze them. I don't know. The biggest problem with The Last 5 Days is that apart from telling these details to the viewer, the film just doesn't have the budget or the creative shortcuts to bring these ideas to life. It passes the authenticity test with no forced camera angles, no additional music, or no multiple camera edits that would somehow take away from the concept that this was found footage, but I feel that it just doesn't make it as an entertaining full-length film. A short film might have been a better way to communicate this story, with the prep for the trip to the two locations, and then a truncated version of the stuff back home. It's the aftermath of this trip that ended up being tedious for me to sit through, and ultimately where the film falls apart. This is a noble effort from two very young filmmakers, and I encourage them to keep on evolving and improving their already talented filmmaking skills. New on Crackle this week is the Sonata. It's got a winning premise and solid acting. I just wish it had more going for it. When a talented young violinist, Rose Fisher, played by Frey Tingley, hears word of the death of her father, the late great Rutger Hauer, who is a famous composer, she barely bats an eye. when she inherits her father's castle and the rights to his own musical works, she decides to head over to France and check out the estate. While rooting around through her father's things, Rose finds the unpublished final work of her father, which has bizarre symbols written into the music. While her agent and mentor, Charles, played by Simon Akbarian, tries to get to the bottom of what Rose's father was working on, Rose plays the music and seems to unlock a portal, making way for the Antichrist and hellish demons to come here to Earth. The idea that a piece of music so complex that it could unlock a doorway to hell seems like an unmade Hellraiser movie that I would love to see. Unfortunately, the Sonata isn't that movie. While the idea is strong, the execution just feels extremely bland. From the uninspired look of the spirits, with white skin and CG red and glowing eyes, to the rather slow middle section as Rose mopes around the house and Charlie investigates the mystery of the found music. Sure, there are some mild jump scares and a few nightmare sequences that spice up the middle, as Rose learns the power of the music, its history, and what it has to do with her, but the pace moved too slow, and the finish line just didn't have a punch worth the wait. It doesn't help that Freya Tingley plays Rose as a protagonist that is not that sympathetic at all. I understand she's a dedicated violinist, but the cold and callous way she treats those around her really soured any interest or sympathy I had for the character. Tingley is a good actress. She just has a part that's roughly written for her. She looks like a young Heather Langenkamp from A Nightmare on Elm Street here, and I hope to see her in better films. This must have been made closer to Rutger Hauer's death, and while he always gives a commanding performance, he seemed out of breath and frail the few times he is on screen through flashback, premonition, or videos. I wish I could say better things about this one. The atmosphere is nice and gothic, and again, that idea of a puzzle in the form of a musical arrangement is a winner, but the lead's cold demeanor and the lack of teeth in the scares overpowered the good in the Sonata. One might think that the title of the film, Skinwalker, is referring to the Native American legend of the Skinwalker, a common monster that even to this day is the subject of many a creepypasta and cryptid documentary. I have no idea why this film is called Skinwalker, as it bears no similarity to the modern legend. Just another oddity to add to this already odd film. Skinwalker is new, on-demand, and digital download from Cleopatra Entertainment. It's a story that is built on very shaky ground that follows a young woman named Regine, played by Amber Anderson, who seems to be slumming it in the big city with her boyfriend, but when her grandmother passes away, she's called back to her stately manor in a Luxembourg village. Once back in her family home, things start going downhill pretty quickly for Regina. Her father, played by the always great Udo Kier, is more unstable than ever, and will not talk to her about her mother's commitment to a mental institution. A family scandal resurfaces when Robert, played by Halloween 2018's Jefferson Hall, reappears into Regina's life. Years ago, Robert had an affair with Regina's mother, bearing a child, Isaac, with her. Regina remembers the child to be horribly deformed and to have died soon after birth. But Robert proclaims that the child survived and is living somewhere in the decadent mansion. The strange noises around the castle suggest that Robert is right, and Regina sets out to find her brother, despite her father's urgings for her to leave. I think one of the biggest problems with Skinwalker is that Anderson really commits to the crazy and doesn't care if she retains any semblance of likability or relatability. The decline in Regine's mental state is gradual, but she really does some despicable things like attempting to sleep with Robert, her mother's lover, and having a violent episode in the middle of her grandmother's funeral service. While Kier's father is supposed to be an imposing figure, and Robert is supposed to be some kind of threat to the stability of the family, these are the characters I sympathized with when Regine was having her fits. Their discomfort is the feeling I felt most powerfully, but I think the film still wants the viewer to empathize with Regine. I will say that this is a fearless performance by Amber Anderson as Regine. Her contortions, self-harm, aimless running, and violent outbursts are convincing to the point of being extremely tough to watch. If Skinwalker is successful at anything, it's transporting the viewer into the head of a very unwell mind. The problem is that I think it does it so well that sympathy is something that is completely lost. Skinwalker has some great practical effects for the Isaac makeup. I also thought the high-pitched voice of the deformed man was an especially creepy detail. Skinwalker is not without its moments, but overall, it's an aimless look inside a sick mind where structure is tossed out the window too soon and never comes back. Clownery just plopped up on Tubi this week, and with a name like that, I couldn't help but take a blind dive into it. While clowns don't really scare me, I'm always curious as to see why they scare others. I doubt you'll find the answers in Clownery, but it's not without some merit. Emma, played by Katerina Korchinaska, is not a fan of birthdays. That happens when your mother dies, and your father murders 2 birthday clowns all on your 10th birthday. Years later, Emma is an outcast at school, shy to the boys, and seeing clowns eating and terrorizing people everywhere she goes. On her 18th birthday, her father returns to be in her life, and her best friend Allison, Serena P. Palmisano, decides it's time for Emma to have a surprise party. As an added bonus, a maniac clown is schlepping around the town murdering folks. Happy birthday, Emma! Clownery is one of those weird films you just watch unfold to see what depraved and simply unexplainable places it might venture to. It's definitely not highbrow cinema. Schlocky and sleazy are good words for it. It's a film where not a lot makes sense, and most of it occurs in some kind of sleepy, surreal dream reality where everyone isn't quite acting normal. There's definitely a cultural disconnect in Clownery. This is an Italian film where all the actresses and actors are speaking English, but it's broken English. I guess it's trying to pass Emma and her pals off as trendy American gals, but their thick accents make me wish they would have just spoken Italian all the way through. There are quite a few twisted scenes of debauchery and a solid handful of murders in an assortment of clowny ways. For some reason, every guy is a lecherous pervert, and every gal is eager to bang as well. All but Emma, that is, who is shamed for not being as slutty as the rest of them. It seems everyone relies on prostitutes and dominatrices to get off, and everyone seems to have some kind of kink going on that really gives this film a raunchy feel. Surprisingly, though, there's no nudity. Clownery isn't a must-see, but it does do a pretty solid spiral into madness by the end of the film, as the clowns and Emma meet up. Reminiscent of Carnival of Souls, both the original and the surprisingly effective modern remake, Clownery gets a mild recommendation from me for the lengths of perversion the film isn't afraid to venture into and the confident landing this film makes on a very small budget. We wrap up this week's low-budget binge with Psychotic. It's available on the Kings of Horror Network. While I don't know what the scene is like in Brooklyn, I feel I know quite a bit about the popular hipster culture, having lived in Chicago for the last 20 years. Psychotic does seem to represent this rather annoying yet pervasive culture, if not in a good light, an accurate one. As slasher films were born to punish the youth culture for their transgressions, I feel the hipster, trust fund, millennial culture definitely deserve to have their own special brand of punishment. A group of Brooklyn 20-somethings are targeted by a mask-wearing slasher. The film follows a group of these kids as they party, drink, smoke weed, don't work, dream of being in a rock band, collect money from their parents, and avoid paying rent, all the while blaming each other for their problems and taking not even a whiff of responsibility for their own selfish actions. So a slasher shows up to take responsibility in his or her own blade-brandishing hands. While the bulk of this film is made in a tongue-in-cheek fashion, the film does show a rather honest and cynical look at the 20-something entitlement and the microscopic size of their musings, passions, problems, and excuses. While Jason seemed to be the big government boogeyman fighting against premarital sex and drugs in the 80s, this slasher seems to be the responsibility police of today, murdering people who shuck rent, cheat on their partners, and basically treat all of their so-called friends like shit. The film opens with a fun POV scene, a la Halloween, and handles quite a few of the fear sequences rather well. So if these filmmakers are interested in making a more serious horror film, I'd definitely be game to watch it. Reminiscent of Student Bodies, a slasher satire that most likely none of the cast or crew of this film has seen, Psychotic wasn't made to be taken seriously, but it does act as a solid satire on the millennial, trust fund, hipster culture and all of the negative crap that it represents. That'll be it for today. Remember to check below for information about the Gravetrancers contest. If you like this video, please pound the thumbs up button. Share this video with your social media addicted pals. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on mlmillerwrites.com. And be sure to subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for alerts to be the first to see my future videos. Thanks so much for your time, and take care.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside You're